T minus 15 minutes.
Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. We're about to go live on Rumble in about 1 minute and 23 seconds. Please come to Rumble. The links to our Rumble Live is available on the comment section if you're watching this on social media or on YouTube, as we are going to cut away from YouTube and social media right after the countdown is over. We'll overlap, maybe a minute or two. But this will be our new setup for 2024. Welcome to 2024, everybody. It doesn't feel like I said on the comment, that it doesn't feel like the official back to business of 2024 or the new year is here unless the children goes back to school. And today they go back to school. So we're about 36 seconds before we go live. We are already pre-live on Rumble. Please come to the Rumble channel for the entirety of the live show, as we are going to cut off. If you're listening on YouTube or on Facebook, we are going to cut away from it in 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's 2024, the 8th of January, Monday, 2024, the year of our Lord. I am your host, Ordinary Joe. This is Freedom Fighter Radio, coming to you live from the heart of the Great White North, the heart of the true North, strong and free. We have a new setup here at the studio. Looking forward and welcoming 2024. We are going to start turning on that camera Monday next week. At least twice a week. But folks, I am happy that we are able to do this, albeit all the technical difficulties. Our main computer has effectively now totally wrecked, totally dysfunctional, but we are going to move forward. I'll tell you more about it on the other side of our intro. Let's get the show started right now.
Freedom Fighter Radio, what is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right,
always. Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful.
Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Please consider supporting the OJTV production costs and be an insider member for only $3 a month. Go to patreon.com/OJTV Canada. Thank you for your continued support.
Canadians all across the country are sick and tired of the lies, the fear-mongering, and the hate speech they hear from the mainstream media. Download the free radio app, Freedom Fighter Radio. Click the link below, scan our QR code, join our mailing list, and get a free download of our Freedom Fighter Radio app only here on OJTV on The Ordinary Joe Show.
It's Freedom Fighter Radio on a Monday. It's the 8th of January. It's 10:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome to the 2024 edition of the Freedom Fighter Radio. We added a new gadget here that I'm still learning how to use. We got a Bluetooth connected a digital mixer from the phone to the Bluetooth connector to the soundboard. And you'll see the setup of the studio soon enough. Our camera seems to be working with the new computer. Our computer that we have been using for 3 years to broadcast the Freedom Fighter Radio has given out 4 nights ago. And thank God that we have wonderful brothers and sisters in the fight, wonderful brothers and sisters in the faith who really care about the Freedom Fighter Radio. That 2 years ago, we had this donation of a brand new computer. Well, he builds computers, and he built one perfect system for us 2 years ago. And I couldn't connect it because I had to buy some extra component, and the budget was quite low. You know, it doesn't connect to the internet. So, and, you know, I need to get some peripherals, and I only had one monitor anyway. So I was using the old computer. Something's going on with our, with something's, okay. I don't know what happened there. Oh, let's just turn that thing off. Okay, so we have this computer that we have been using for 3 years. Well, I've been using it for 5 years, because before we were doing Freedom Podcasting, let me just see my indicator if you guys are hearing me. So forgive the technicalities today. We're getting used to a brand new computer that our brother in the fight, Edward Ronquillo, has blessed us with 2 years ago. And it was just sitting there for a while because I couldn't connect it. I only had one keyboard, one mouse, one monitor. And so I was just letting it sit there. I've been intending to have it connected as at least offline computer for our editing, because it was more powerful than the Mac that we were using for 3 years. I've been using it for 5 years, because before Freedom Podcasting, I was podcasting for entertainment community purposes in the Filipino-Canadian space, but that was nationwide as well. I had I was connected with most radio, television, and newspaper media publishers and personalities all across the nation in the Filipino-Canadian space. But that's also the inroads that the Lord has blessed us with, to be able to connect with many federal politicians. And as you know, since Andrew Scheer, we have been invited to at least once a year to have a one-on-one interview with the current leader of the opposition. Well, I was only active after the Trudeau government has already came to power. I think Trudeau came to power. The Trudeau Liberals came to form government first in 2016. I wish I would have been podcasting already prior to that, during the Harper era. But I would tell you that I was so brainwashed in the Harper era. I was so brainwashed by the conservatives. I thought that they are real opposition to the government. I would have been, praising the Conservative Party left and right. Only recently, because of all the pandemics, that yours truly has been woken up to the reality that we don't have. There is an illusion of choice in Canada. We really don't have an opposition. Both the opposition and the government are, in the leash of whoever is the puppet master is. Technically we think it's the royalties, the monarchy from, and people would, of course, disagree that there is still a British Empire. Most people don't know, or most people believe that the British Empire has already been eradicated, and we call them now the Commonwealth countries. But there are still at least 16 countries. Don't quote me on that. I'm making forgetting exactly what's the exact number, but it's under 20 countries that are loyal to the uh, so-called Commonwealth in today's era, but they truly are still following the monarchy or apologies, everybody's sneezing in my apartment, including yours truly. My Mrs. Ordinary Jane's called in sick and home today because everybody was kind of feeling under the weather. I started with my daughter and yours truly too, been sneezing a lot. So you'll be hearing a lot of sneezing in the background. But life goes on. A lot of people think that the British Empire has already been eradicated, but the current Commonwealth nations, there are still loyalist countries. And the relationship that we have to the British Empire still continues as if the British Empire still is in existence. And one of those countries is the country of Canada. And I started discovering many of these, not really in my political deep dive research, but believe it or not, it's actually deep dive research in the Christian world, in my faith research regarding the Nephilims, regarding transhuman agenda from the perspective of the biblical point of view, biblical worldview. And that's where I discovered how the relationship of the monarchy to the former British Empire colonies, that includes Canada, um, that includes Australia, New Zealand, Singapore. Well, Singapore kind of became more independent back in the 70s because of their Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. When I mute myself like that, I think you know exactly what's going on. So we're all under the weather here. But folks, I came on here. Let's see, I'm gonna cut myself from the last thought again, which is a bad habit that we need to get rid of for 2024. So that is the British Empire. The spirit of it, at least, is still around, and so many people, rightfully so, would think, and it's probably true. I don't know exactly who is the puppet master behind the those who yanks the leash that is around the necks of state nation leaders such as prime ministers, presidents, and well, you could even say kings. One of the discovery, I'll share this quickly, but this is not really what I want to share with you today. But I came across this research regarding the 11th century. A certain king, and he's um, you know how kings used to have a nickname, James the Terrible, something like that. I forgot what his name is. What? But yeah, his nickname was the Terrible. Apparently, in the 11th century, this particular king have what he've done was to incorporate the city of London. I'm trying to refresh my memory about that because there's a faction within the British Empire, one of the strongest faction. I can't remember what they're called now. This faction has taken over the kingship, and this particular king, uh, very, you would suspect that he knows what's going to happen in the future. So incorporated the city of London, and that corporation was now known the Crown. So when we think of the Crown in British colony countries, like such as what we have here in Canada, when we think of the Crown, we think of monarchy. But apparently, the legality behind the Crown, the monarchy is not necessarily the Crown. The monarchy, the family, the monarchs, they are submitted to the Crown. And the Crown is actually a corporation that was incorporated back in the 11th century by this particular king with the nickname the Terrible. And because London is the crown jewel of the British Empire and it's now called the Crown, all of the wealth of the British Commonwealth that was managed by then called the East India Company. Wait, not East India. The something India Company. I should have brushed up on this before I shared today, but it's a research that I did last year and I shared thoroughly last year. But so this particular India Company was also the think tank in those days. But it paved way when the Rothschild, particularly Nathan Rothschild, did this market manipulation during the battle on Waterloo between what's the name of the British general versus Napoleon of France. And France was defeated, but that was a very first instance of a fake news market manipulation incidents where the news network of Nathan's Rothschild have propagated a false or fake news that the Battle of Waterloo was the British was defeated in the Battle of Waterloo, although it's the opposite. That was actually the truth, and therefore, stockbrokers react to the market even back in those days. I can't remember exactly how far back was this, but you can research the Battle of Waterloo, whatever century that was. But that was the day when the Rothschild family, particularly Nathan Rothschilds, became the wealthiest man in the world because of that fake news that he propagated all throughout his network. All the institutional institutional traders, or market makers, traders, fund managers, they all sold out because of the bad news. But he has already instructed all of his cohorts, all of his brokers, Nathan Rothschild, that is, to start buying up all the sell-off of the market, pennies to the dollar. He already anticipated the reaction. He was the one who created the bad news, a false news, fake news. And he was getting ready for the market reaction. And as institutional traders would sell off, he will buy as much of the stock market. Well, the British stock market was the biggest back then, right? He will buy everything pennies to the dollars. And that was the one day that the Rothschild dynasty, or well, you cannot technically call them dynasty because they're not in politics except for one of the Rothschilds, I think. But the powers of the Rothschild, financial powers anyways, was accumulated in that one day during the Battle of Waterloo between Napoleon and the British general, which the name escapes me right now. But since in the 11th century, this particular king, the Terrible, has instituted or incorporated London, the crown jewel of the British Empire, as the crown,
which was the name of the corporation, is the Crown. And if you live in Canada, Australia, or New Zealand, you will hear about the Crown corporations, right? These are the corporations, much like here in Canada, the CBC is one of the Crown corporations, meaning it is owned by the Crown. But who owns the Crown? The question is, in a country that is under the British Empire, it is totally opposite what it is structurally and constitutionally what the United States is. And the United States was born because of their escape from the tyranny of the British Empire. The biggest difference between the United States and Canada, United States is the government of the United States is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Technically, legally, spiritually, structurally, and in all aspects, citizens of countries that are in the Commonwealth, like I said in the beginning of this episode, I believe that the British Empire in the spirit still here. We don't call them the British Empire, but Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and at least 11 or 16 more countries in the Commonwealth calls themselves Commonwealth countries, but in fact, they are still subjects of the British Empire. So, the king is a symbolic head, is what they tell you. But the king used to be the queen, right? Before the queen has passed away last year, right? The queen can assign a governor general on every single Commonwealth country. Some of them are symbolic members of the Commonwealth nations. Some of them are symbolic. That's true. They're not full-fledged members of the Commonwealth. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and 16 other countries, including those 4 that I mentioned, are still ascribed to the monarchy as if it was still the British Empire. And the king, used to be the queen, can assign a governor general in our countries who can actually, with the stroke of a pen, can fire the prime minister of that country. So if you think about that, right? And I know that during the truckers convoy in Canada, there was actually an attempt. I believe one of those who helped pioneer that attempt is our friend of our show, who is one of the trucker convoy leaders, James, the president of Canada Unity, who's a controversial figure, as they did a hit piece on him on CBC. Everything was unfair for James. What happened to James? Understandably so, there are some things that he might have crossed the line on some things, but but he was functioning out of the sincerity of his heart. Maybe he got some bad advice regarding the legality of some of the things that he was doing. But one of the sound things that he did that I cannot criticize him for was one of the campaigns with him and his cohorts have started rallying for signatures to write to the Governor General, to have the Governor General dissolve the government of Justin Trudeau, because they know, and those who understand how Canada and Commonwealth countries work, at least the countries that are still ascribed to the British monarchy, the way they had it set up during the British Empire, they know that the Governor General
with a stroke of a pen, with approval of the queen, back then the queen and now the king, triggered by the people. Well, it could be triggered by the people, but it could also just be for other. It could be triggered by other reasons that the monarchy decides that they would just, we don't like this prime minister, and then cancel it out legally. No. In the last many decades, while the queen was in power, it was not exercised, but legally, the queen could have ordered any country in the Commonwealth countries, any prime minister elected, so-called democratically elected prime minister of certain nation in the Commonwealth countries, the monarchy or the queen, if she so desire, I don't believe there was any account that she exercised that power during her lifetime. But if she wanted to, she could have, without no reason, except that it's the reason of the queen, that she could have ordered the governor general of that certain country to dissolve the government and fire the prime minister. So, with that thought, if you are a citizen of a Commonwealth, e.g., British Empire country, do you really have a democratic right to elect your leader? Or is your leader, your member of parliament, are they symbolic heads but truly have no power? Folks, don't go away. We'll be right back.
Imagine that the power grid was totally wiped by an EMP weapon of an enemy state. Your stress level will go to the roof, your patience will be tried, you will have to think about both your own and your complaining children's survival. If you don't survive, your children won't when they are left on their own. Teach your children how to have the mentality of being survivors through a fun, children-friendly guided outdoor adventures with basic survivor mindfulness integrated in the fun outing activity. Call my friends Ornell and Victoria who are experienced survivors. Call them at 905-252-8009 or email them at northernpacificcottages@gmail.com.
It's too important not to. It's just that simple. It has to be done.
I must continue to keep fighting for the Canada and the Ontario we once had.
Hello, I'm Tom Marazzo. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show.
We're here to talk. Let's find a peaceful resolution to this, and I'm not going home until the job is done.
Only here on the Ordinary Joe Show.
Welcome back, folks, to the show. Usually we got some music transition that's going on when we come back in from the break. But like I said, we have a new setup here because our computer has just broken down and not functional anymore. That's why you see some glitches like the banner on the bottom of your screen. I'm supposed to be playing right now our sponsors banners, so I have to apologize to all of our sponsors. Okay, now it's playing, but for a while there, let me see, looks like we still have a problem. And for a while there, when we started, it still said standby. In the first segment, the full first segment, it showed the banner as standby. It's not easy to control this new system. It's window based, and I haven't used Windows based system since maybe 2015. So I'm kind of brushing up on how to use Windows. And so we still need to get a Mac. Anybody out there, our listeners who are, do you have even an old Mac, as old as 2015, 2016, old Mac that you're not using anymore, but would still update in the current version operating system, and you would like to donate that to the Freedom Fighter Radio, we would really appreciate it, because I still prefer to go live on the Mac just because I know how to use it. And there you go. See how if you're watching this on stream video, you will see the banner has that white bar on top of the banner, and we don't have that. We don't have that white bar on top of the banner that you will see on the bottom of the screen for all of our sponsors. Apologies to all the sponsors that I couldn't play the sponsorship banner earlier on the first segment. Like I said, we're still adjusting to the new system here on Mac. But going back to what we were talking about, the House of Commons in British Empire countries. I'm just going to stick with the British Empire countries. I know people who have not listened to the first segment would. You need to go back to the first segment to understand why I'm calling Commonwealth countries British Empire countries. Because technically the British Empire is supposed to be not non-existent anymore. I think that is just a fallacy. But in British Commonwealth or British Empire countries, or should we call them colonies? British Empire colonies, okay? Which Canada is one of them, British Empire colonies. Our version of what we know the United States to have as the United States Congress, which is comprised of the upper house and the lower house, which means the senators and the congressmen. Congressmen are the lower house. Our counterpart on that, from in comparison to that system, albeit the Americans got their system sort of like a template from the British Empire, but improved upon and taken away in the institute, the Constitution of the American government has been reformed to try and get rid of the possibility of monarch tyranny. But the U.S. Congress of the House, that the lower house is called the House, and the upper house is called the Senate. The counterpart in British Empire colonies we call the House of Commons. So our House of Commons are comprised of members of Parliament, we call MPs in Canada. These are elected members of different ridings. I think we have about 200 plus ridings all across Canada, representing all their ridings. And a riding is what you call an electoral district in the United States. We call it riding in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand. We call it the ridings. Members of Parliament will have office in their constituency office, but they will also have an office in Ottawa. But the vast majority of their time is spent not with their constituents in their home riding or their electoral district. Vast majority of the time that they spend is in Ottawa, supposed to be representing the people who elected them into their seats. But instead, it's the other way around. MPs are representatives of the king, how the king wants to impose his power upon the people. It's not the other way around. It's the other way around. It's not the way we think it is. So in Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, at least these are the four countries I know, part of the Five I countries. And the United States, for part of the Five I, and the United States is the only country who is not a British monarch, a British colony anymore, right? A Five Eyes alliances. The other four in the Five Eyes alliances, again, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. The House of Commons are elected representatives from different ridings called MPs or Member of Parliaments. But the Senate, I believe, I might be, I'm not sure about the United Kingdom or, London, but I believe all four, except I'm not sure about the United Kingdom, but all four, I believe the Senate in all four countries are appointed by the Prime Minister, although they are appointed for life. So former Prime Ministers' appointees continue to sit in the Senate even after the Prime Minister who appointed them term already expires. They outlive the life of the Prime Minister who appoints them. So all of the senators in the House of Senate, the other name for the House of Senate in British colonies, are called the House of Lords. Right? Imagine in the United States if we start calling senators as lords. But that's exactly what they were. The senators originally. So the senators in the United States are elected, but the senators in British colonies, such as Canada, were appointed. So to kind of hide behind the real powers of the monarchy, the prime ministers appoints the senators. But in the old days, it's the king who appoints the senators, and the senators, or the lords, originally they're called the lords, the House of Lords. They are usually the barons, the oligarchs, the wealthy families that supports the king. Whoever are the families that are loyalists to the kings, they are the ones who's appointed, the House of Lords, a seat at the House of Lords. And it was the king who would appoint members of the House of Lords to be the lords, literally lording over. Overlords is another word for them, overlords. But if I was talking like this back in the day when I was doing the community podcasting or community radio broadcasting for the Filipino Canadian community all across this country, some of my friends will disown me for saying this because one of our close friend was the wife of then Senator Tobias Enverga, who was appointed by Stephen Harper, the very first Filipino Canadian appointed to the Senate by the Conservatives. And he died during a vacation in an accident of some sort. I think it's maybe scuba diving accident. I can't remember. But the family are friends of the It's Just Another Ordinary Joe Show Filipino version of this podcast. When I used to do that back in 2017, 2018. So, but the senators are appointed in this country. And the senators, if you look deeper into the history of senators in British colonies, they are the lords. So the last time that the Queen, I think this was due to the pandemic when the Queen was still alive, the last time that both the House of Lords, it's also called the House of Peers, that's another name for the House of Lords, The House of Lords or the House of Peers, we call in Canada the House of Senate. In the United Kingdom, the last time that the House of Lords and the House of Commons, so the elected members of Parliament and the appointed senators or lords in the United Kingdom, the last time that they had a joint assembly together to listen to the Queen's statement, and the now king used to be the prince then. The last time they had this joint assembly in the United Kingdom, you can see that the members of the House of Commons were invited to walk from the House of Commons, walk towards the House of Lords. They were invited to the House of Lords, right? And that's where the Queen will be addressing the nation or the empire, actually. And you can see how the members of the House of Commons, which are the elected representatives of the people, how they were treated. You guys can go back and this is still available on YouTube. Look at just the symbolic appearance of how this assembly looks like. All of the members of the House of Lords, which are the lords, the senators, the appointed members of the House of Peers, they were all sitting comfortably in their majestic chairs in the House of Lords. And the members of Parliament, the elected members of Parliament, were invited to come and listen to the Queen's address. And they were all standing at the back of the room. All the members, the elected members of the people, the members of Parliament, we call MPs. Same in Canada, we have the same. A little different naming, a slightly different version, but essentially the same structure in Canada. The elected members of the House of Commons were standing like sardines, packed like sardines at the back of the room, while the House of Lords were sitting comfortably and with the appearance of power. The appearance of power and officiality and monarchy. They also have the uniforms, the majestic looking, these old British Empire uniforms, with the curly hairs, and they look like judges, magistrates. and the members of the House of Commons, the MPs, they all wearing, their usual coat and tie and pants. They don't look royalty at all. But that is rubbing right at your face. The truth about being a country which is a member of the British Empire, your member of Parliament is a symbolic, it's all for show. They really don't have any power in running the government, even the Prime Minister. So that's the reason in Canada, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, someone who is a juvenile delinquent, such as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, were allowed to ascend into the prime ministership because, well, the truth is the prime minister of the country under the British Empire doesn't really have any power. Well, that's my opinion. Brothers and sisters in the fight, some of our leaders here do not agree with me, but this is my personal analysis. The prime minister really doesn't have any power, in real power, because in a British colony, a country under the British Empire, the people do not get to decide. The members, the citizens of the country do not get to decide what happens to the direction of the country. That's why I question, and I don't want to go too deep yet because these are some of the things that we are going to discuss for the rest of the week. And I said I will just share a quick thought about, because what I want to talk to you about today is what some of the things that we are going to cover for the first quarter 2024 of the Freedom Fighter Radio, what we have in store for you. But let me just, and again, I don't know how to turn all of those off, folks. You hear these notification bells. It's a Windows based computer we're using for the broadcast today, and I don't know how to turn off some of these notification noises. So we'll figure it out as we go along. So pray for the Freedom Fighter Radio, and I pray that somebody would donate a new Mac to the show so that we can get back to our workflow. Our workflow on the Freedom Fighter Radio is kind of thrown off a curveball because of the new system that we're using. The system is great. It's just yours truly don't know how to control the system properly. And actually, so thankful for this new computer donated 2 years ago. It has a built-in multi-screen, so I can add up to 5 screens and it will coordinate, 5 screens, which is fitting for the kind of video podcasting that we want to do. It's actually better than the Mac. It's just that I don't know how to work Windows properly anymore. So back to the fallacy or the pretense of, again, the United States government is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Governments of Commonwealth countries, again, to be more accurate, I would like to call them British colonies, British Empire colonies. The people are given a symbolic illusion, an illusion that we can elect representatives, an illusion that we can somewhat I forgot to turn off Facebook and YouTube, so we are still on YouTube and Facebook. But the illusion that the citizens have any say to the direction of the country, that is actually what it is in British colonies, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom. And think of the pandemic. When the pandemic was raging, who were the countries that were most tyrannical? Think of who has the heaviest lockdown, who has the more police atrocities committed, police abuse. Which countries have abused their citizens the most during the pandemic lockdowns? I think topping them all is Australia. Canada and New Zealand are next in line. United Kingdom also suffered a lot of heavy tyrannical overreach. The citizens of British colonies have been given an illusion that they are empowered to elect a representative, to elect a representative to speak for in their behalf. So the reason I am supporting one of our local candidates for premiership here in Ontario, Derek Sloan, which is, I'm going to interview again coming soon, because the Ontario Party, which he is the leader of, has finally been given back their official status. It was taken away and they were given a hard time. So I'm going to interview Mr. Sloan next week, hopefully, because he wants to give the official announcement that the Ontario party is back in business. So I won't go in details anymore regarding that, but I'll let him talk about that next week. I'll let you know what day we're going to do that. But Derek Sloan also weighed in on my interview with the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, which is supposed to be coming out this week. But again, and that's the reason I'm coming live today, albeit no pre-production for this show, to tell you that I'm having a hard time installing my editing softwares on this brand new computer. Again, there's nothing wrong with the computer. There's something wrong with me. I don't know how to well, I'm not very much acquainted with Windows system, and that's the reason for all the computer is great. The computer, very thankful to Edward Ronquillo, who donated this great system to the Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm just the entire workflow was sort of created on the Mac, so that's why I don't know. I spent the whole day yesterday to trying installing DaVinci Resolve, which is our editing software that we use for the show. I'm sitting on Pierre Poilievre raw video, and because there are leaders such as Derek Sloan in Ontario, Bob Leone from Alberta, and Mr. Mark Friesen from Saskatchewan, who weighed in on my interview with Mr. Pierre Poilievre, which I want to integrate in the entire, edited together in my entire interview with, and a bunch of my research regarding the way our government's relationship with the oil oligarchs or the oil companies who dictates upon our consumption and production of oil in this country is being dictated upon us by foreign entities, foreign national corporations. And I'm going to go deep dive, and I start both in the Pierre Poilievre episode, which will touch a little bit, mid dive, but on a separate follow-up episode, I'm going deep diving on the fallacy of choice. And this is across the board. It's not only in Canada, but it includes the United States. The fallacy, the illusion of choice that we have in our society. Let me give you a quick example because it's sort of like in my frontal lobe right now, and if I don't address it, I'll forget. So I don't have any notes. I don't have any rehearsal whenever we turn on this microphone for our Freedom Fighter Radio listeners. But let me touch on it quickly before I forget. The illusion of choice, primarily in many of our Western societies, we're always given an illusion that there are only two choices. Or if we're given choices more than two, and you trace back, where are these, the other choices, where are they coming from? You can you can trace it back again into two main choices. So an example of that are the oligopolies in our society, such as media, for example. Media, all of radio, television, and print media in the United States are owned by only 6 corporations. But all 6 corporations can be narrowed down into 2 choices: BlackRock and Vanguard. Basically, they're owned by those 2. And if you even go deeper on the deep dive, Vanguard and BlackRock are not competitors. They own each other too. So this is the illusion of choice, folks. We think we have choices. So in the political arena, there is another fallacy of the dichotomy of choices in our society. And just to give an example of the simpler illusion of choice is even in corporations, right? Or products that we buy, we have dichotomies of, are you a Coke person or a Pepsi, right? The illusion choice for politics. Are you a Democrat or a Republican? There's only two choices, you think, but the two choices, it pretty much is a uniparty. Birds of the same feather flock together, but they kind of have a little highlight to give the difference, to make you think that this other side is your friend because it's the enemy of your enemy is your friend. That is totally a controlled up psyop, a warfare against the perception of the people. So I used to be very friendly with Mr. Pierre Polyev, and I want to continue to engage with him, so I'm not going full throttle ballistic on him because I want him to stay engaged. I don't know if my last interview with him will be the last one because he started seeing where I'm coming from. So I'm not sure if he's gonna invite me again. His press secretary, we were talking about doing a town hall in February. I don't know if that's still gonna happen. I pitch a town hall for the Filipino Canadian community because that's originally how they reach out to me, because they believe that I have reached to the Filipino Canadian community all across the country. That's why they reach out to me. That was the purpose that they want me to interview Mr. Pierre Polyev, is for the Filipino community. But I told them that I don't only ask questions for the Filipino community. I'm asking questions for the Canadian community, especially the freedom community, and they know that now. So I don't know if they will continue to engage, because he knew from my line of questioning in the last pre-recorded interview that, questions that Mark Friesen asked him, similar sort, regarding SDGs, regarding the WEF, and he has a very canned answer regarding those globalist agenda. He has a canned answer, but he doesn't like addressing those questions. I can tell that because I can see the demeanor and the countenance on his face, how it changed very quickly when I started asking the questions that the member of the freedom community would like to hear him address. But the idea that we have an opposition to the government, so to kind of hold the feet of the government to the fire, that is an illusion, folks. And it doesn't matter if it's Stephen Harper, Jean, what's his name again? The former Liberal Prime Minister, Jean Jaurès. No, not Jean Jaurès. I forgot. He was the Prime Minister when I first arrived in Canada in 93. It doesn't matter who is the Prime Minister. It doesn't matter if it's Polyev, Erin O'Toole, Andrew Scheer, Candace Bergen. I interviewed all four of those leaders of the Conservative Party. I interviewed some of the cabinet members of Trudeau. I almost interviewed Trudeau in person in Ottawa, and something happened when we were in Ottawa, and he had to bail out last minute. But I interviewed some of his high-ranking members, such as Ahmed Hussein, Marco Mendicino. Used to be friendly with him because I see him everywhere in the Filipino community. They're really sucking up to the electorate. But it doesn't matter, folks. It doesn't matter who the Prime Minister is. The Prime Minister is a symbolic gesture to pacify people, to make people think that they have the power to elect their government. Sorry, folks, I have to be truthful with what I am, with my opinion, what I'm discovering. And I know I'm jumping all over the place, but there's so much accumulated thoughts about when you get red pilled and when you get exposed to many of these truths, there's words cannot express how you can paint a picture of what you are seeing. You kind of mumble and that's why it's easy to vilify red pillars or freedom podcasters because it's easy to paint us with the conspiracy theorist brush, because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming when your eyes are open to the truth, to express in words what you are seeing and to share what you are seeing. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Your brain is running at 1,000 kilometers an hour, 1,000 miles per hour, but your mouth can only speak so fast. That's why talking is exhausting. That's the truth. Podcasting is physically exhausting to the vocal cords because you're mustering up all of your brain neurons. How do you express in words what you are seeing in your mind? I do not trust Pierre Poilievre, but I am pulling some of the punches because I want him to stay engaged, and he is likely going to be our next prime minister. But who cares? Again, we gotta zoom in and zoom out with our situation in our societies. Zooming in is, that's a very narrow view of the world, of our country. When we zoom in, and there are many YouTubers who are thriving in their YouTube channels, just focusing on the Pierre versus Trudeau comparisons. And a lot of people will elect Pierre Poilievre to be our next prime minister. And I can sense that it is even the CBC, even those who sings the praises of Justin Trudeau are now warming up to the same infrastructure, political infrastructure is now warming up to a Pierre Poilievre prime minister. And they're starting to throw Trudeau under the bus. There's only, I think, 19% of the Liberals prefer Trudeau to be the leader of the Liberal Party. But why is he the leader? If there's only 19% of the Liberal Party, he knows how to manipulate. And the puppet masters of both the Liberals and the Conservative, the government and the opposition, the puppet master only allows Trudeau to be in power. Let me backtrack. Trudeau is in power because the only reason he's in power is because he's been allowed. He's been allowed by the puppet masters. And this particular episode, we're trying to pin down who are the puppet masters. Is it the British Empire, the shadowy British Empire that most people think is not in existence anymore? Is it the WEF? Is it the United Nations? The billionaires? You know what? The truth is, it's all that. It's all that. But to really, in my opinion, and we're not going to go deeper than this, I'll just make this statement today and then we'll follow up in the next coming days. The puppet masters are the Luciferians. That's what it is. And we know them from different brands. Again, illusion of choice is part of the game. Some of us think they're the Freemasons. Some of us think they are the Bilderberg Group. But those are expressions of who they are. If you dive deeper into the origins, they're no different from Luciferian Illuminatis, right? They are all Luciferian Illuminatis. They are the operatives of the fallen watchers. And we'll go into that in the next coming days. In Canada, the government is called the Canadian. Let me what is it called again? When the Queen visited. Oh, sorry. When Joe Biden visited Canada, and they lined up the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, the so the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, which is pretty much our Vice President, the counterpart to the Vice President, the leader of the opposition, and the Deputy Leader of the opposition. They lined them up to greet the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Remember that Pierre Poilievre have to explain to Joe Biden how both the government and the opposition are called the official opposition of the crown, the Majesty's royal opposition. So the opposition, we think, speaks for the people, right? The opposition's job, the official opposition's job, is to hold the feet of the government to the fire. But the allegiance of the leader of the opposition and the office of the leader of the opposition is called His Majesty's, used to be Her Majesty's royal opposition. It's staring us right on our face, folks. There, I don't know how much more we need to see. It's really is right there, right in front of us, how everything is controlled by the puppet masters. So it doesn't matter if you are the elected prime minister or you are the elected leader of the opposition, supposed to be the voice of the people, to hold the feet of the government to the fire. Both sides, the official government, the elected government, is His Majesty's government of Canada, and the opposition, the one who checks and balance, supposed to be what the government is doing, or hold them in check, hold their power in check all the time, is also called His Majesty's royal opposition. So both the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, are both puppets of the puppet master, the British royalty. The British royalty. So it's an illusion of choice. It's an illusion that we have an opposition. Let me close with this. My daughter learned how to read just before she turned 1. I think that was my prayer when my daughter was born. My prayer to the Lord was, Lord, make me into a good dad. I don't know how to be a dad. I'm afraid initially how to be. I don't know, but I can only pattern my daddyhood from my own dad. And my dad was a pretty good dad. He's not perfect, and there's a lot of flaws. And I can look up to my dad, but my dad is 1,000 times percent more successful than yours truly when it comes to financial success. My dad was pretty wealthy. So I grew up in a very secured, middle class, upper middle class home growing up in the Philippines. My dad was pretty frugal because he was kind of rags to riches kind of man. He really worked hard to build his wealth and his influence. But when he was younger, he struggled through life. They were poor when he was up to his college days. They were a poor family. the saying, hard times makes strong men makes good times make weak men. So I'm on the fourth turning. I'm probably, because my dad was strong and successful, and because of his success and his wealth, probably inadvertently, they kind of, his boys are not as strong as him. We are not as strong as our dad. Our dad is very successful, knows how, he's very successful financially anyways. So when my daughter was born and I was not as financially successful as my dad, I thought, my, one of the best gifts I can give my daughter to be a good dad are some of the things I know. So one of the things I know is how to teach a child how to read early, because my mom was also a teacher of preschool teacher. My mom used to have her own school, preschool, in the Philippines, and I used to help. And so I taught my daughter how to read very, very early. Many of the families around here in Deer Park area was so impressed. My daughter started reading before she turned 1. And she was reading when she was in kindergarten. She was reading so advanced compared to her classmates. They had this reading program they call RAS Kids Reading. The rest of the class are in level A, B, or the fastest one maybe level C. My daughter have kind of propelled all the way to level J, while everybody was level A, B, or C. My daughter has propelled to level J. Anyways, I'm very proud of having taught my daughter early reading skills. So she's a very good reader. And just a few months ago, they always have these book sales in her school. And a few months ago, she picked up this book because last summer when we went to Quebec, well, when we have downtime in the hotel, she started violating my rule. I told her before you start, because she has access to Netflix, and ever since she was a little girl, she already had an iPad. She knows how to use an iPad at 2 years old, 3 years old. And it was both good and bad, because that's the iPad. Also, some reading programs on the iPad really helped me teach her how to read as well. So she knows how to manipulate the iPad for ever since she was born. And she knows how to go to Netflix. It's just the only way I can safeguard her is give her a lot of, admonition and advice how to stay safe. But sometimes, I let my guards down and she would navigate through. For the most part, she's very respectful of my rule that before she start watching anything on Netflix, she will check with me and I will review, and I will tell her, okay, go ahead. Or I will tell her, no, pick something else. Right. But anyways, in June, when we were in Quebec, in the car, and also downtime in the hotel, in the car, because hours and hours of road trip driving, she doesn't enjoy the scenery as much as her mom and myself. We enjoy looking out in the empty vast land, the greens. She doesn't. She's bored with that, so she would watch all of her favorite Netflix show while we're in the car. And she started watching some Hunger Games. So she saw one chapter, one movie of Hunger Games, and then she saw this book during a book sale in school, which was the title of the latest Hunger Game addition to the series, called the Ballad of Snakes and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So yesterday, on Saturday, during our rest day, she asked her mom to rent from Stream, because it's still playing in the theaters. I think the latest addition to the Hunger Games, a saga. It's called, And it was a prequel, actually. This movie, the latest movie called The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, it's a prequel to, if you follow the Hunger Games, the name of the person who is the president of the Capitol is Cory. Uh, uh, we were we were laughing at the last syllable of his name is sounds like anus, Coriolanus. Snow, President Snow. This the latest movie was the story of President Snow when he was just a student, when he was a young man. But anyways, when the very first Hunger Games was rolled out, when my daughter was just 1 year old. So when she picked up this book and she read through it very quickly, the entire book. That's why she can also become a movie critic, I think, because she never stopped talking throughout the movie. She's like, "This is, you know, they shortcut everything in the movie. It's not like the book." She was criticizing the movie, how the movie is 2.5 hours. I was explaining to her the book, if they include everything in the book that you read in the movie, it will be like a 4-hour movie. But they have to, concise everything down in a 2-hour movie. And what you read is probably a 9-hour movie if they include everything from the book. And so she read this book and she asked us to watch it with her on Saturday, the latest movie, Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes. It's pretty good. I would recommend it if you're a red-pilled person. And so I went back and I start watching the all four movies that started 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, right? Every year there was a Hunger Game movie since 2012. And she was only 1 year old when the first Hunger Game came out. I remember being, I was not a Freedom podcaster in 2012. Harper was still the prime minister. 2012, right? I watched a lot of Alex Jones back in 2012. I have a lot of criticism against the Obama presidency back then, but I was not so critical of the Canadian government because I was not red-pilled regarding Stephen Harper and the Conservative Party back then. But I was starting to get red-pilled on the Agenda 2030, called Agenda 21 back then. Anyways, if you think of the analogy of the Hunger Games, if you think of Canada, if Canada was the Hunger Games, think about it. Who was President Snow of the capital? Do you think that our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is President Snow? If we counterpart the Hunger Games analogy. By the way, folks, we cannot dismiss any of the Hollywood movies. The tyrants, the technocrats use it for predictive programming. But if you are red-pilled, you can use it as a tool to wake up people. So it's a double-edged sword. And sometimes they specifically show the truth on these Hollywood movies in their mind for the purpose of predictive programming so that people will acclimatize to the tyranny that they want to roll out. But at the same time, you can use it to red pill people. Anyways, if you think about the Hunger Games, right? President Snow and the Prime Minister of Canada are not equals. They're not. If you think of the structure of the government structure and the social structure of the Hunger Games, in my opinion, and I will go further with this in the next episodes, I'll make this statement and leave your questions why I think this way. whether you leave your questions, I will discuss it tomorrow why I think this way. But I think if Canada was the Hunger Games capital, President Snow is not the prime minister. The prime minister, in my opinion, is the same level as the game maker. The game maker. Now, the star of the game in the first movie, 2012, was the Hunger Games. Katniss Everdeen. Who is Katniss Everdeen? The game maker is the prime minister. The head of the opposition, in my opinion, is the star of the Hunger Games, the winner, the victor. In that movie, it's Katniss Everdeen, right? And we think, yes, we know that the narrative talks about how Katniss Everdeen is the star of the show, the star, and she is the protagonist, right? The good guy, the good part. Yes, that is how the writers are projecting Katniss Everdeen. But think about it. Katniss Everdeen was their puppet. Was the puppet of the capital. So, in my opinion, if Canada was the Hunger Games, President Snow is nowhere to be seen. We don't know who he is. The Prime Minister is the game maker. The leader of the opposition is the victor, Katniss Everdeen. So Joe, are you saying that Pierre Poilievre is Katniss Everdeen, and so he's the good guy then, right, Joe? Well, hold on a second. Let's talk deeper about that a little bit now and more tomorrow. If you think about Katniss Everdeen, what was her function for the capital? Her function was to promote. And again, first of all, she was not a leader. She doesn't have the desire to be the leader. She ends up being the face of the revolution. But the truth is, she was a puppet, both of the rebels and the capital. So for Katniss Everdeen, whoever would give her freedom, or who would suffice her personal selfish desire, that's the propaganda she will be willing to allow herself to be a tool of. So when she became the victor of the Hunger Games, and she became the face of the Hunger Games, right? She has to go from town to town to all the districts and promote the taglines of President Snow. So Katniss Everdeen is a controlled opposition. She is a tool of propaganda for the capital. But when the rebels were able to get her on their side, she continued to be a tool of propaganda for the rebel side. The game maker is speaking for the president of the capital. But the opposition that inspired the rebellion, folks, I would recommend everybody to go back and watch the Hunger Games. If you're red-pilled, you will be, I think it's more timely now, post Truckers Convoy, post awakening of patriotism in Canada, because prior to our 2022 Truckers Convoy, I think Canada was pretty much asleep. In 2012, when the Hunger Games first came out, I think you will have more appreciation of the Hunger Games now, post-pandemic, post-lockdowns, post being red pilled, you will have a lot of appreciation. If you're red pilled, if you're awake. If you're not awake, you'll go to sleep even deeper. Because the same tool, like I said, the same tool that the social engineers are using to put us to sleep is the same tool we can use. It's a double-edged sword, like I said. And anyways, I will go deeper tomorrow. Why, if Canada was the Hunger Games, President Snow is the hidden hand. He could be, he could be Klaus Schwab. He could be the United Nations director. He could be Fauci, but at the end, he is the hidden hand. President Snow is the hidden hand, in my opinion. The Prime Minister is the game maker. The official opposition of the government is Katniss Everdeen, or the star player of the Hunger Games. But she has to follow the diktats of the President Snow. And so, if you really open your eyes, the protagonist of the Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen, or whoever is the victor of the Hunger Games, they're the controlled opposition. Katniss Everdeen is controlled opposition. And I think if Canada is the Hunger Games, Pierre Poilievre is Katniss Everdeen. Let's leave it at that for today, folks. Allergies are kicking in again, and so we have to take a break for now and continue to fix the problems that we have here with the new system. But please continue to pray for the Freedom Fighter Radio. For the first quarter, we're hoping to get Dr. Leslie Lewis. Next week, we are going to schedule the full episode with Pierre Poilievre and the supplementary clips from leaders of the freedom community. We also have, in the next coming weeks, Steve Favis, the scientist who discovered the satellites over Lahaina during the fire last summer in Lahaina, Hawaii. He documented the possible directed energy weapons from space, and he has proof of these, and he has proof of how a Chinese general was fired after his report came out. That is coming up in the next coming weeks. We are reaching out to some. There's going to be more American guests and also federal personalities as guests to the show. We're trying to reach out to Maxime Bernier, Dr. Leslie Lewis. I'm going to reach out again to some of the shadow cabinet members of Pierre. And I'm open to interview some of the cabinet members of Justin Trudeau, even though, because they already identified me as, a freedom podcaster. Most of the liberal MPs do not like to speak to any media that they do not control. They only speak to media that they can control, in my experience. The Conservative Party, at least, they would still control their media engagement, but they want to paint themselves, to brand themselves as the voice of the people. Okay, we are going to use that to our advantage. So coming next week will be the full episode. Hopefully, pray for that I'm able to install the editing software to get that going for next week, and some of the wonderful guests that we are lining up for the show. We didn't cut away from Facebook or YouTube today. So this will be available on YouTube, but the best
please subscribe to our Rumble and our Odyssey, because that is the semi-decent free speech platform that we're using for now, until we're able to launch our own website and our own radio station in the future. But for now, thank you for tuning in. God bless you all. Share, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good day.
Freedom Fighter Radio. What is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful. Yes.
Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Please consider supporting the OJTV production costs and be an insider member for only $3 a month. Go to patreon.com/OJTV Canada. Thank you for your continued support.
Canadians all across the country are sick and tired of the lies, the fear-mongering, and the hate speech they hear from the mainstream media. Download the free radio app, Freedom Fighter Radio. Click the link below, scan our QR code, join our mailing list, and get a free download of our Freedom Fighter Radio app only here on OJTV on The Ordinary Joe Show.